Good afternoon. Welcome to our weekly Greyshirt chat. So my name is Kendra Pospychalla. I will be your host today. I'm the Deputy Director of Capabilities Research, Design, and Development. That's at least on a normal basis. In the middle of this COVID response, I've taken kind of a second billet as the deputy for the COVID operations under David Burke. A little bit about me. I am a Marine Corps veteran. I've been working in the disaster management space for about 9 years, and I actually started with Team Rubicon as a volunteer in 2012. I was in Rockaway Beach during Sandy. And so today we're going to have a panel of a few folks that I'll introduce you to. Our topics for today, we're going to talk about past activities and some of the things that we're doing to look ahead. If you have questions, feel free to throw them in the chat as we go through, and we're going to answer them near the end. We'll do our best to answer them all anyway. But with no further ado, I'm going to hand you over first to John Connors. He's our Deputy Director for Regional Operations in the Northeast, and he's going to talk to you about some of our domestic operations and preparing for the season.
Thank you, Kendra. Good afternoon, friends. It's great to be here. As mentioned, my name is John Connors, and I am also a former Marine who's been with Team Rubicon for over 6 years now. I started as a general volunteer, held several volunteer leadership positions. I'm an alumni of the Clay Hunt Fellowship Program, and I am now fortunate to be the Deputy Director of Territory Operations for the mighty Northeast Territory, where I'm blessed to lead over 29,000 gray shirts with a volunteer leadership team of just over 200 hard chargers. I'm excited to be here today on the Greyshirt chat to talk about everybody's favorite topic, operations. But before we cover current operations, I'd be remiss if we didn't touch on a few of the benchmark events throughout our 10-year history to understand how we got to where we are today. Many of you know TR was formed 10 years ago in 2010 after the devastating earthquakes in Haiti. But it wasn't until 2011 that we pivoted to start responding to domestic disasters. Our first domestic response was in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, after a tornado destroyed communities there. In 2012, TR put all of our eggs in one basket, packed up shop, and moved everybody to New York and northern New Jersey after Superstorm Sandy, where Kendra was a responder. This was a real make or break moment for TR, and it got us noticed across the country. I know that the image of a handful of gray shirts organizing thousands of spontaneous volunteers in the Rockaways of New York City will always remain with me. 2013 saw Team Rubicon respond to the massive tornado in Moore, Oklahoma, with another response there that pushed the boundaries of our capabilities. But again, because of the hard work and dedication of the swarm of gray shirts, the communities were assisted. This was also the year that TR implemented ICS, or Incident Command System, that some of you know and love so much, which elevated our professional abilities as it allows all of our gray shirts to have an understanding of how we operate the way we do. And it also allows us to plug into local, state, and national responses seamlessly in ways that other nonprofits can't do. TR took a risk doing that, and it paid off. In 2014, TR dove into developing training opportunities for all of our gray shirts. Everything from advanced ICS to core operations to heavy equipment now became priorities. Prior to this, to operate a chainsaw on an operation, all you had to do was show up. And was this cool? Yeah, it was cool. Was it safe? Probably not. But we saw the risk, and we ensured that we developed training pipelines for safety and proficiency. And that, again, has allowed us to increase our capabilities, which allows us to serve more communities in need. As TR continued to grow, so did the capabilities of local leadership teams. And in 2015, we decentralized operational responses. Previously, every aspect of an operation had been led by the national staff. But now that work, everything from preparation to planning to execution, was passed to the regions. And this was another step built on a solid history of performing that allows us to serve more people. And again, it was a risk, and that risk paid off. Also in 2015, we responded to floods in Wimberley, Texas, which was our biggest flood response to date. Once again, pushing our capabilities and increasing the scope of our possibilities. You might be noticing a trend here. 2016 saw the groundbreaking of our National Operations Center outside Dallas, Texas, which was created to further support operations around the country, which had been increasing in size, scope, and complexity. This added level of support has allowed us across the nation to launch and sustain countless operations at the local level. We couldn't do it without the support of the National Operations Center. Finally, I'll mention 2017's responses to Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria. staggering, sobering, historic domestic disasters. Team Rubicon once again took a huge risk, and we doubled down on Houston, Texas, and said, hey, we're going all into Texas and we're going to do what we can. We committed thousands of gray shirts to the response there. We innovated, we stepped out of our comfort zone, and we launched our first ever swiftwater boat operations. Our amazing development team also got us partnered up with everybody from pro sports organizations that helped us get our message out, to American Airlines, who gave us entire aircraft to get waves of gray shirts to the disaster zones. Again, pushing limits, pushing capabilities, and using the skills and experiences of our brothers and sisters to come up with new ways to help. So why did I take this time for this little history lesson? As Winston Churchill once famously said, those who fail to learn from history are condemned to repeat it. Team Rubicon is a living and breathing organism that's constantly striving to improve our processes, improve our trainings, improve our technologies, all so that we can better empower our gray shirts to better serve those communities who need it on their worst days. Did I mention every stress point or every decision that changed the organization? Absolutely not. Those things happen on a daily basis. But I wanted to touch on a few that at the time may have seemed crazy or unsustainable, because I think that holds a lot of relevance as to what's going on with TR today. TR right now, under the COVID lens, how are we operating? Where are we heading? And how do we look forward? You know, as we started the new year, no one had any idea of the imminent pandemic's impact, both on the globe, on the nation, and on our organization. Once the risks became clear, we immediately halted all in-person engagements. That's classes, trainings, mitigation operations, all in order to better protect our most valuable resources, which is our gray shirts. If we don't have healthy gray shirts, we can't help those in need. And if you're a registered gray shirt, you've seen all these changes as they've been happening, changing from in-person events to all online, all virtual events, trainings, workshops, even campfires. We're doing campfires digitally now, which might not be the same, but it's the best we can do with the technology we have. Again, it's a new way for us to engage. So all the while, we're working to keep our gray shirts safe and not expose anyone to increased risk. So we're finding new ways to respond and new ways to help our communities, whether it's partnering to assist with isolation support facilities or standing up COVID testing locations, which we now have, I believe, half a dozen in California, and those are going to be spreading across the country as well. The world of disaster response looks different for us right now, more different than I think any of us could have predicted 3 months ago. And it doesn't stop there. We're constantly innovating to find new ways that we can respond to this pandemic. For the first time ever, we're doing domestic medical responses, which is amazing. Right now, we have teams in the Navajo Nation in Arizona who've treated over 1,300 patients. And if you know anything about how COVID is affecting the country, Native Americans are disproportionately affected by the health challenges that COVID lays on them. So it's, we should all be proud that TR was able to find a way to get in there and help these communities at risk. And if you had said domestic medical was a possibility even 6 months ago, even 4 months ago, I would have told you that I like your motivation, but you're probably thinking a little aggressively. I would have been wrong. TR always looking for a way to get to yes. Through all the other COVID operations we're doing, and there have now been over 200 COVID ops in the past 10 weeks, we've served communities all over the country by delivering over 14 million pounds of food, by packaging over 4 million meals, and serving an additional 1 million meals in person. Staggering numbers of capabilities that were not even a possibility just a few months ago. We've also launched our Neighbors Helping Neighbors program, which has been fully embraced by our ass-kicking gray shirts, who've now completed over 4,500 individual acts of service in their local areas. We should all be so proud. Our latest rollout of Neighbors Helping Neighbors is our emergency food service responses, which just rolled out last week. You can see it in roll call when you sign in. And we've already had several hundred requests for food assistance completed just over the past few days. Again, amazing work by those gray shirts in the field. We're always looking forward with new and innovative ways to serve. Now, the weather forecast for traditional responses does not look like it's going to take it easy on us at all. NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, just released their North Atlantic predictions I believe it was 2 days ago. And their study says that just for the Atlantic alone, we're looking at a 60% chance of higher than usual storm activity just for the East Coast. something we should all be prepared for or getting there. We've also had indicators and seen additional studies that the wildfire season out west will be more dangerous than ever. A more active than usual tornado season is already taking place in the south central and the southeast. We're not seeing any less work coming down the pipeline as a result of these natural disasters. So all the while that our COVID responses are happening, I don't know if you know, but we've also been responding to over a dozen of our traditional core ops responses across the country, utilizing rank and file gray shirts safely alongside sawyers and heavy equipment operators to combat tornado damage. Even with all the challenges that we're facing with proper physical distancing and PPE, personal protective equipment, we're still making it work. And for the foreseeable future, our planning teams who work remotely are all incorporating additional vulnerabilities into the process. Things like, is there enough room for billeting for, however many gray shirts are going to be there? Is the community dangerously overwhelmed by COVID in their hospitals? Are we going to put a burden on the community if we show up? Do we have enough local gray shirts to respond since we're not doing massive flight operations right now? All of these are questions that our teams are addressing every single day. What's the proper PPE that's needed now for a sawyer versus someone who'll be mucking out a basement? And do we have a pipeline to replenish the PPE if we need it? A million new questions that are being looked at, analyzed, and addressed every single day so that we're prepared rolling into what's going to be a very busy, busy season. And everyone across the organization, from operations to capabilities to training, everyone's looking at these, putting in their 2 cents to make sure that we can properly operate aggressively and safely with our gray shirts. And as we look forward, we continue to ask ourselves, how do we continue to engage our gray shirts remotely, especially the folks who are older, like me, who are not allowed to safely deploy downrange because of age? How do we tap into the knowledge and experience that our over 65 gray shirts have? You might not know, but a lot of our most seasoned deployers are over 65 because they've retired and they have a bit more free time to dedicate to TR. So what we want to do is figure out, how do we tap into that drive? How do we tap into the immeasurable experiences of these experienced gray shirts that we can share that knowledge, share that wealth, and get it out there to all gray shirts? And finally, what new online engagements can we come up with to help people continue to share that knowledge? And as we press forward into storm season, know this: we're still going to be responding with our core operations to natural disasters. Will there be big flight ops? Probably not. Is every aspect of our operations going to be affected by COVID? Absolutely. Will we most likely have less gray shirts that can go downrange? Probably. But will that stop us? No, it absolutely will not stop us from helping those in need. We will continue to innovate, create solutions, whether it's through grit and grime or through partnerships. We will find a way to accomplish our mission. And as we say, we always try and find a way to get to yes. And then in closing, I'd just like to remind us all of our mission statement, which states that we serve communities by mobilizing veterans to continue their service, leveraging their skills and experience, both of which I talked about, to help people prepare for, respond to, and recover from disasters and humanitarian crises, both of which we're seeing on an unprecedented scale right now. So the future looks busy, folks, so buckle up. If you're not already a gray shirt, if you're just watching to learn about TR, please sign up. You can get there by teamrubiconusa.org. If you are already a gray shirt, make sure your roll call profile is up to date. Complete any and all TR classes that you can online so that, when the bat signal goes up and we need help for communities, you're ready to go. So continue to kick ass, and thank you for all you do. And back to you, Kendra.
Connors, that was great. Thank you so much. If you're listening, just a friendly reminder, feel free to throw questions in the chat box. At the end of this, we're going to try to get to what we can. But next up on our panel, we have Mike Watkins. He's the director over territory operations. He's going to chat with us about the major medical operations that we've had and what we can expect moving forward.
Hey, good afternoon, tribe. Mike Watkins, director of the Midwest, just like Kendra said, filling in the role, really supporting complex medical operations since COVID has kicked off. If you look behind me, you'll see some Marine Corps pictures. So just like the other two, I spent some time in the Marine Corps. So that always makes me smile when we dominate the conversation. But Laura is much smarter than all of us combined. So her conversation will be just as good. With that, I've been a member of Team Rubicon since 2015, stepped into the regional administrative role early on with Region 5, took on Region 7 as well, and really just helped support the volunteers and volunteer leaders across those two regions making up the Midwest territory. COVID has brought on really a lot of new capabilities and opportunities for Greyshirts to serve. Some of the most significant outside of core operations really fall down to our Neighbors Helping Neighbors campaigns, emergency food service, food bank support, and then really diving into domestic medical and COVID testing as some of the newer things to look at and get engaged with. When we talk about domestic medical, previously all of our medical support has been international because credentialing was one of those challenges that we faced here within the United States. COVID brought forward the backdrop, the necessity, and also some of the means to help solve for that, where we're able to credential our people across state lines much easier and at a more frequent pace. So with that, we're now participating in field medical stations, care facilities, augmenting hospital staff and ambulance staffs. And we've done this a few times. We'll talk about some of the early ones and what we're still doing, as well as what we're looking to do here in the future. Our first domestic medical support was with Santa Clara. It was a field medical station. We supported for almost a month. It was 200 bed capacity, but it was an overflow station. So we didn't see the need as much as we anticipated kind of kicking this thing off. So they're able to see over a dozen patients over the course that they were there, and they stayed for the duration that we committed to. One of the bigger events, or the longer duration events that we've been supporting, has been out at Navajo Nation in Kayenta, Arizona. We have healthcare workers there, incident command. We're supporting the emergency department as well as ambulance staffs. They're committed to stay there up until June. But we're also looking at extending there because they're seeing some of the highest rate of infection and the most underserviced population that they have. They've seen over 1,350 patients and have over 2,000 hours of clinical time supporting in Arizona. On the horizon, some of the things that we're looking at is continued international deployments. We have some requests coming in at this time. We've been brainstorming for the last couple of weeks how to overcome some of those hurdles. We look at some of the international support requests. They have quarantine times once you come into a country, once you come home from the country. So those could equate up to like 30 days of quarantine before we're even helping anyone on the ground. We're looking to get through those challenges as well as logistical support to those, and also metering against the needs here at home to make sure that we're putting our people in the right place at the right time. With the addition to the medical support, we've also conducted a lot of COVID testing across the country. We've either conducted or supported more than 8,000 tests up until this time is ramping up, and it'll probably be the sustained need kind of going forward as we look at continuing this across the country. One of the first teams that we were able to pair up was Atrium Health in North Carolina, where we actually had medical providers there on staff and conducted over 500 tests. Since then, we've looked to continue that relationship with Atrium, and we'll stand up 2 more roving sites in the first week of June. We're still working through those details, but it'll be in the greater Charlotte area, and a need for 10 to 20 day-on, stay-on Greyshirts to help support that. We'll be working with the Southeast team to bring that to fruition, and all things that'll come over the next week. We've also been lucky enough to team up with another organization called Verily out in California. So primarily the Southwest is tackling this. We have several sites between Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Lake County, with another potential that came in about an hour ago to stand up just outside of Oakland for next week. One of the more complicated scenarios there is a completely pedestrian site in San Francisco, where we've seen more than 200 participants yesterday get tested. And those, everyone in that site is coming in on foot. So it's a new challenge and something that the Southwest is just crushing and continues to do a really good job as far as advancing that partnership and bringing it to the communities that are in the most need. With the international support, we'll continue to look at that and adjust as we go, but just know that that's on the horizon. Piggybacking on Kendra's situations for questions, please submit those at the bottom of your screen. But then going into this weekend, as we reflect and remember those that have served and have sacrificed, we're going to honor their memory by continuing to find additional ways for us to serve. So spend the time remembering those that have paid the ultimate sacrifice this Memorial Day weekend, and try to get engaged, find another way to serve, and we'll answer your questions here at the end. That's what I have for you today. Kendra, back to you.
Thank you, sir. Next up, we have Laura Silva. She is the Deputy Director for Learning and Insights, and she's going to chat with us about some new learning opportunities and training and past and future. Over to you.
Thank you, Kendra. Really great to virtually meet you all. This is my first chance to really get out in front of the Greyshirt community. I feel a privilege to do that and let you know a little bit about why I'm here. One of the first things I figured out about TR in my interviews and jumping into the arena is that it's a learning organization. And so it's a great place to be. It's a behind the scenes role, and I lead a small and mighty team that puts together learning solutions to keep you guys safe out there. I do not have a military background. I am the daughter of an Army sergeant from Korea, but I am one of the millions of beneficiaries of your service and the service of first responders out there. So, and those who sacrificed and made the ultimate sacrifice, can't be more grateful. So having said that, when we moved into this pandemic season, really had to kind of take stock of what we know and how we do things and how we did things and what we could do to meet the needs of training and keeping our Greyshirts safe out there on these unusual kinds of operations we had never done before. So one of the first things we did is take a look at, well, gee, what have we been doing in the past? What do we have that we can do something with? And the first thing that came to mind was really packaging these online courses that were already in our inventory and putting them into an order, like by level, having some that are for deployability, some that are for field leadership, and others for field skills, and putting those up in an intentional way on roll call and creating a national training campaign around them and to promote them and increase their visibility and the number of trainings going through. So to establish that, we worked with the Greyshirt, the Recruit and Train Task Force to identify some targets to hit during a 90-day period starting March 14th. So we put those 3 levels up on roll call. You've all been responding, many of you have. I'm happy to report that the deployability target is at 56% of, our progress is at 56% of the goal. And the level 2 training, which is again, field leadership, our PIO for field leadership is at 23% of that goal. And then Core Ops 1 is at 108% of the goal. So we've already surpassed that goal. You can see more of those numbers at the CAPE SharePoint homepage if you're interested in seeing that and tracking that on a weekly basis. But that's one of the first things we did. We just took what we had and repackaged it, put it out there in this environment where we can't really be close to each other. We can't like talk in the same spot or sit in the same spot for very long, but everybody could log in on their home computer and continue to get trained, help us build capacity and get people engaged and involved. So another way that we actually took the past and put it into the present, we took a look at some existing kind of position-specific role type courses that were in person and turned them into virtual instructor-led training. So again, people can participate. We could build capacity around things like logistics section chief, planning section chief, site safety, recon advon, things that would traditionally be taught in the classroom. So we launched those over maybe the last 5 or 6 weeks, and those are being now trained and on the weekends and other times offered by the training capacity team. So in the present, we had to think about how do we get new training around safety out into the hands of the people who are on these operations where now it is kind of life and death-ish, because you're going to expose yourself to conditions that may not bode well for you if you get sick, or your family if you make them sick. So we looked at creating just-in-time, on-demand training around COVID safety guidance that the research team actually developed. And we wanted to make sure of a few things. It had to be different in that it had to be short, quick bursts of learning. It had to be accessible on a phone. It had to be, couldn't be password protected. We wanted it to be something that anybody could access as they need to, when they need to. And it had to be easily updated. So we honed down what we would normally deliver in the form of a full course, and we created these little kind of bite-sized learning, put them up on roll call. You can go there right now to the training center and select Flash Learning and find these different COVID Flash Learnings. You could see them on your phone. And they update regularly, so you can check them out, because the guidance for COVID, as we know, is changing. So with that use case, we determined we had to be different in the present. So we're still continuing to work on those. A newly released one is called the PPE Trained Observer, because one of the things that learning is about is how is what we're doing working? You know, is our training working? Are our operations working? What are we hearing from the field? So Kendra's team is very much involved in helping us capture that kind of information from the guidance that they've developed. And so we say, well, we need a PPE trained observer, somebody who's out on the sites, making sure that everybody's following the right protocol so that they're staying safe, the PPE that they're using. So that was another flash learning we just released. Another one looking into the future is how do we teach things like planning section chief and other role-specific courses using technology that's constantly changing, right? And in learning experiences where not everybody has a login to our system where they get all the data for the operations. So we created these software simulations, and we're gonna roll them out for the first time with planning section chief course that'll be hitting the streets, I think the weekend of the June 3rd as a train the trainer offering. And again, the training shop will be offering that. But this is where somebody can get the experience of working in EMS, get the data they need for the operation, and feel as if they've actually driven the car or the bus. And then when they're out in the operation, they've got that muscle memory to apply those skills. So we want to continue to develop things like this. Mobilization is our next target for this kind of training. So hopefully they're not quick to create. They're not like flash learning, but they're really effective. And they're more easily updatable than other solutions. So we're looking to the future to release that. Other things we've done in this process, and others can probably attest to this, is when everything is going at a faster pace and you have to change what you're doing and how you're doing it, you find new ways of moving forward and innovating. And that's awesome. I love that. I love change. I love improving. And if TR didn't learn from its experiences, it would be a bummer to work here. So again, it's a learning environment. I love that. And so some of the efficiencies we've created are creating a training completions dashboard to track how many people are being trained in these various virtual instructor-led training and other forms of training in order to see how we're building capacity. So working with the training shop to do that. That's up on the CAPE SharePoint homepage as well. We're also doing online course evaluations, which seems kind of like a boring thing, but we actually want to hear how you feel about the training you're getting, whether it's online or it's instructor-led or virtual, because we want to know what your perceptions of your readiness are to get out there. Did this training really prepare you well? Do you feel like there's something lacking or I need more? We really want to know that. It's nice to know if the instructor was effective and all of that as well, and if you knew where the bathroom was, but we really more importantly want to know, do you feel prepared to get out there and deploy? In addition to that, our online course assessments for those courses that do have a pass-fail associated with them. You've done these probably in the past. If you've taken any instructor-led training, we now have them online, so that can get recorded in the EMS, which is where everybody goes to see who's capable and who's got the training to go out on different kinds of operations and different roles. So that's something to look forward to in the future. And the last thing I really just want to say is you served all of us. And so I feel like preparing these learning solutions to kind of meet your training needs and keep you safe is my way and my team's way of serving you as you're out there kind of helping all these communities. So thank you for your service.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, we're going to go to questions here in just a moment, but I wanted to take a moment to talk about something that we're working on, kind of building on some of the things that folks have already said. Very quickly, when COVID started, the operational tempo, it went up pretty dramatically, right? Which created a lot of demands throughout the whole nation and within the organization as well. So a lot of demands out in the communities of different services that were needed. And so very quickly we adapted and created a lot of these new services. And there was a lot more considered as well. We tried to say yes to absolutely everything. With this, we grew pretty considerably, and it created a lot of additional projects and additional initiatives to improve and expand our processes to be able to meet the new operational tempos. And so what started to emerge was teams and departments within the organization, particularly kind of looking at this from a national level at headquarters and such. Everybody was working really hard to adapt and create these new processes and expand and reach all these different services, create the different services. So slowly what we started to see was an emerging of conflicting priorities among teams based off of the different vantage points that everybody had in order to meet all these demands. And we are an organization, just like most organizations, of limited resources and capacity. And so we started to look at different ways of trying to unify the use of those different resources and capacity. And so some of the strategies that we came up with primarily is we are now setting weekly priorities. So at a national level, each week we push out about 10, it varies each week, priorities, and they're listed in order of priority to unify everybody in the same direction on what we're going to try to accomplish that week as an organization, and to align everybody into the same vein. So a lot of the things, it's new. It's only been we've only been trying it for a couple of weeks, but we are hoping that this does start to route all of the resources in alignment together. We're also starting to look at what we're going to look at over the next few months. So now that we've gotten to an operational pace where we can start looking ahead a little bit more, we're starting to talk and look in that area as well. So that was the last thing that I wanted to brief us on. And now I can probably jump to questions. So I hope everybody's been throwing them in there. Let me see what we have. So how does a 70-plus-year-old volunteer like I am get involved to work as a logistics section chief or other remote aid? That is our first question. And Connors.
Yes, thank you. And Raymond, thank you for your question. And thank you for signing up for TR. When you sign into Roll Call, when you look at your landing page, there's a list on the left-hand side that lists out your local points of contact, and it will have your metro contact, which is the person closest to you, your state contact, region, and territory. So if you ever have questions like this, you can go right to them and they will get back to you with an answer. In the meantime, when you're in your roll call profile, there's a spot there to enter your skills and experiences. We encourage everyone to add any skill or any experience you might have, even if it seems like it might not make sense. When we launched swiftwater boat operations after Hurricane Harvey, that was a capability we had never done before. So it wasn't a checkbox that we asked people to fill out, but we had enough people who entered that skill, swiftwater boat rescue, into their profiles that we were able to launch an op, which was a new capability that we had never done before. So any experience you have, like logistics section chief, and loggies are a special breed, make sure it's in there. And then finally, there is a sign up list for remote support. I don't have the link on me, but maybe one of our teammates who is monitoring the chat can find the link for the remote sign up and drop that in the chat box. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Connors. Next question that we have in, where does the name Kick the King come from? Watkins, you got this one?
Yep, I can take this. When we were in early mission planning team calls, we wanted to set the tone on how we're going to respond to the coronavirus. The coronavirus gets its name from representing what looks like a crown. So we associated the crown with the king. And to kind of set that tone, like we tried to brainstorm on how we could kick Corona's ass. And then that essentially got shortened down a little bit by a 6'5" Marine to kick the king. And that's where the name comes from. That's where the name comes from. And that's what we're rolling with.
Thank you. We have a question for Laura. Laura, are you adding questions to post-deployment surveys that ask if you felt the courses or training prepared you for field operations?
I would like to do that. So yes, we will be doing that. We don't currently have anything that specific, but that's something I'm after doing. So thanks for the suggestion.
Next question, and I can kind of open it up to whoever thinks they got this one. So next question, I'm a healthcare worker, EMT, and I just joined TR as a Greyshirt. I'm interested in helping. How do I get put together with these deployments?
I'll jump in for the first half of that. Again, and I think there was another question in there that got buried that was any room for paramedics on your team? So yes, this goes back to entering your skills and experiences into your roll call profile. Every kind of healthcare worker, whether you are an EMT, paramedic, nurse practitioner, nurse, doctor, surgeon, whatever, there is room for you. We need you. International operations that we do are primarily medically based. So no matter what level of qualifications you have, there is probably something that we can find for you to do. So make sure your roll call profile is up to date with whatever your qualifications are, and also certifications.
Next question, and I can take this one. What are the current priorities and where can a regular Greyshirt find them? This is a great question. So as of tonight, for those that are familiar with it, the Capabilities Research Design and Development team publishes the COVID-19 Operations Manual, which is a manual that contains most of the policies and protocols that we've been developing to reach the COVID context. Starting tonight, those priorities will be published in that manual. So if you are on operations, you should be able to get your hands on that. Volunteer leaders also should have access to that. I won't go through and list all of the priorities, but I'll talk through kind of the first one because that's the first couple, I'll say. The first one is to ensure all activities and operations are planned, implemented, and executed with COVID-19 safety and operational modifications. So our first priority is all of the safety protocols and policies and any procedures and tools that we're going to need in order to ensure that our Greyshirts and the folks that we're helping are safe in this COVID context. That is our top priority. And there's actually a decent amount of work that goes into that. Everything from PPE and supply lists to protocols and research with technical advisors and epidemiologists on the best ways to ensure this. So, yes, John.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to jump in for the next questions that popped up in the box. Sorry.
Go for it.
Got a little excited.
Go for it.
So Dave asks, Dave, thanks for asking a question. Any idea when we expect the over 65-year-old age restriction to be lifted? We are following very strictly the CDC guidelines. So once the CDC lightens that up, then we're going to do it as well. We can't wait to unleash the hounds safely because we know our 65-year-old crew is chomping at the bit to get out there and help people. So I would say stand by. I'm sure that the moment that's lifted or adjusted, we will send out notifications to everybody saying, you know, hey, Greyshirt, let's get shit done together. And then the next question in that chat is from Gary. Gary, thanks for asking. It says, I was registered for a FEMA class at the NOC at the end of the month, but of course it was canceled. Is there any planning to have those classes in the regions? So oftentimes TR allows its Greyshirts to attend the FEMA classes when they're being taught locally by locally emergency management groups. So I would recommend reaching out to your local contacts and see if there's any in the area. But again, safety first. I assure you that no classes are happening anywhere right now. But once they do, we'll let you know. Thank you.
I want to add on to that, if you don't mind. There's some discussion around getting FEMA to agree to allow those offered online. And so Terry Harvey would be the right person to connect about that. He's leading that discussion for TR.
Next question. Is there a plan for replenishing our PPE? Disasters are coming. So I'll take a piece of this and then I'll let a few others, because I think that there's definitely a collaborative effort in getting that question answered even. So I know that on the research, design, and development side, we are looking into alternatives. We're talking to different vendors and looking into different ways that we can I would say, replenish our PPE and have alternatives to that PPE. But as far as the supply chain goes, that one is one I couldn't answer. And if anybody has anything to add to that.
Some of the other things that we're looking at is some of our partner organizations have transitioned either their factories or their shops into creating personal protective equipment. So we're looking at every realm, everything that Kendra just talked about. We'll find a way to get to yes, and we'll continue to make sure that we can respond to help people on their worst days.
And I would just add regarding PPE, Toby, you asked that question. Thanks for asking. We should all be proud of Team Rubicon. We gave away as much PPE as humanly possible with still maintaining our ability to do core ops. So tens of thousands of N95 masks, Tyvek suits, gloves, everything you can imagine, we gave to local groups based on local needs. So it was the territories and the states finding those local communities who needed it most, whether it was police and fire or hospitals or veteran services. So I think we should all be proud about the fact that TR, unloaded what we had, what we could give away safely.
In addition to the PPE question, we're also looking at just taking a hard look at all of our resources that we have currently and getting everything ready for the disaster cycle that John talked about earlier. So we'll be ready to fight when the time comes.
Okay, so next question. Can we open a playground function or sandbox for the EMS to allow for system training before we get more traditional ops going again?
Thanks for asking that. That's been a common question. And I think there's some nervousness around having it wide open. And even a sandbox is quite a lift. So we've created these software simulations as the next best thing that gives you the idea of being in the EMS and walking through kind of a prescribed demo and a practice skills session. But we are looking at other solutions that would allow for live training overlaid on top of the EMS, kind of a expensive solution. So I'm not sure that would be coming anytime soon, but it is something we're discussing.
And I think this next question is best for you as well, Laura. The question is, I did the L449 course, ICS instructor course. Is there a way to teach it in my area for those interested?
So that would actually be a good question for the training capacity group. Terry Harvey and Jack Ginther would be the two to ask about that, because they actually are the ones implementing the training. We just design and develop it. And that one sounds to me like that's like a FEMA course, I think, if I'm not mistaken. And so go ahead.
No, I was going to say I can help out here. So with that course, depending on not only taking that course, but also being signed off by our training team, are the ways to be able to teach to our members. The couple of things that play into effect there are we have to have some agreements with the state in order to teach ICS 300, 400 within the state. We can usually accomplish that pretty easy working through the training team. There are some requirements with our partnership with TEACS for classroom sizes. We're working on that as well, because we're reducing the classroom sizes and the amount of people coming together in a different area during COVID. So there are some things to work through that, but ultimately the answer is we will get to yes, but there are some other things that we have to do ahead of that. So a delayed response, but yes, we can make that happen.
And we have a question on medical operations too, Watkins. When I go into deployment availability and try to add medical operations, it does not list my credentials as a physical therapist. Any chance we can add additional medical providers or an open license option if we aren't included on the RN, MD, paramedic list currently?
So I'll have to take down your information and I'll get with the national operations team, and then I'll circle back with you on that question.
All right. Next question, what is the second most in-demand skill requested for international deployments? All right, Connor.
All right, I'll take this. I can't tell you what the second most in-demand skill requested for international deployments is or are, what the skills are. But I can tell you it varies based on mission. So depending on what the disaster is around the world, we're going to be looking for different qualifications of different types of people. I deployed internationally as a public information officer. not the sexiest job, but very critical. Medical folks are required for other things. We've had operations that required technology experts to go to help with connectivity. So it could be anything. Again, I would make sure your skills are updated in roll call, because at some point, someone who's picking out deployers for operations is going to say, I need someone with this skill. And they're going to search through our database to see if that skill is listed. So get your stuff in there, and maybe you'll get the call.
I want to piggyback on what John said, and only because we will be working on some learning solutions around making sure people who do have interest in deploying internationally also have the ability to work in a complex or austere environment beyond what maybe our normal operations would. So just having kind of that disposition, if you will, to be able to, get through things that are going to be harder than usual, I guess, is what I understand. So, yeah.
All right. So looking in the box, I think that was all the questions that we have for today. Awesome. Well, I thank everyone for joining. I thank the panelists, and I hope that we see you next week at our Greyshirt chat. Everyone have a good rest of your day.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.